The first images of the alien vessel spread across social media, faster than any government could contain them. Shaky phone footage showed a massive structure that defied conventional physics, parts of it seeming to phase in and out of reality as it positioned itself in geosynchronous orbit over Geneva. Dr. Ilara Chen watched the footage loop on the conference room display, her quantum propulsion presentation forgotten as her colleagues abandoned scientific decorum for open-mouthed awe. "The math was right," she whispered, clutching her tablet where her latest calculations predicted the possibility of manipulating quantum fields for propulsion. Calculations that, if correct, would have eventually led humanity to the stars. Calculations that now seemed quaint in the face of living proof that interstellar travel was not only possible but had arrived on their doorstep. The emergency broadcast interrupted the looping footage. "This is not a test. All citizens are advised to remain calm and stay indoors while authorities assess the situation." Professor Yamamoto, head of the physics department, placed a hand on Ilara's shoulder. "They'll need you," he said softly. "Your work." Her phone rang, displaying a blocked number. When she answered, a stern voice simply said, "Dr. Chen, a car is waiting outside. The Secretary General requests your presence." 3 hours later, Ilara found herself in a hastily assembled situation room beneath the UN headquarters, surrounded by military officials, political leaders, and a handful of other scientists plucked from various disciplines. The atmosphere crackled with tension until all screens simultaneously activated, displaying the same message in every human language. "People of Earth, we come in peace and friendship. The Galactic hegemony welcomes you to the interstellar community." The alien who called himself Ambassador Zext appeared almost humanoid at first glance, until you noticed the subtle differences: skin with an opalescent sheen, eyes too large and unblinking, fingers that moved with unsettling precision. His English was perfect, though his mouth movements didn't quite sync with the words. "Your world has been monitored since you first split the atom," Zext explained to the assembled human representatives. "Now that you've begun to explore quantum manipulation, you qualify for first contact protocols." Ilara noticed how the ambassador's gaze lingered on her briefly. Had they somehow identified her research specifically? The diplomatic reception aboard the hegemony vessel was clearly designed to overwhelm human senses. Gravity shifted subtly between chambers. Walls became transparent, offering dizzying views of Earth below. Holographic displays showcased thousands of worlds, species diverse beyond imagination, all part of what Zext called the harmonious hegemony. While other delegates marveled at alien wonders, Ilara studied everything with a scientist's eye. The technology was centuries beyond Earth's capabilities, yet something felt off about the demonstration. When she asked about energy generation principles, the translator device on her lapel briefly flickered. In that moment, she caught Zext's expression changing, a micro-expression of contempt quickly masked by diplomatic pleasantry. Later, as humans were escorted back to Earth, Ilara lingered behind the group, pretending to admire a biotechnology display. With practiced sleight of hand, a skill from her rebellious college days, she palmed a small component that had fallen from a maintenance panel. As the shuttle descended toward Geneva, she kept her expression neutral while her mind raced. The component hidden in her pocket might reveal more about their visitors than all the diplomatic platitudes. What she couldn't know was that High Admiral Vexnareth was already reviewing security footage of her theft, mandibles clicking in what passed for amusement among his kind. "Interesting," he chittered to his subordinate. "Flag this one. She may be trouble." The subordinate entered Dr. Ilara Chen's name into the hegemony database, categorizing her as potential disruptive element and adding a designation that translated roughly to monitor closely. Earth's path to extinction had been set in motion, but not in the way anyone expected. 6 months into negotiations, Ilara's makeshift lab in the basement of MIT had become a security nightmare. Armed guards stationed outside, weekly sweeps for surveillance devices, visitors subjected to electromagnetic scans before entry. Her colleagues called it paranoia. She called it necessary precaution. The component she'd stolen had yielded disturbing insights, microscopic machines that self-replicated using common Earth elements, machines programmed to seek out and subtly corrupt digital information. It's elegant sabotage, she explained to Kai Rodriguez, her former graduate student now serving as her research partner. They're designed to introduce errors so subtle they'd be attributed to human mistake. Kai, hunched over an electron microscope, looked up with bloodshot eyes. Like the dosage error in those pharmaceutical trials last month. Exactly. Or the navigation glitch that nearly crashed those passenger jets. Ilara pulled up a map on her secure terminal. And look at this pattern. Every affected system is within 2 kilometers of a location visited by hegemony diplomats. A notification pinged on her tablet. Another UN Security Council meeting. Another round of hegemony demands thinly disguised as integration guidelines. She was about to dismiss it when a second alert appeared. Unscheduled hegemony flagship approaching Earth orbit. They're escalating, she muttered. Kay's phone buzzed with an incoming text. His expression darkened as he read it. My contact at Woods Hole Oceanographic just spotted another extraction vessel. Third one this week. Location: Mariana Trench. Same pattern. They're focusing on rare earth deposits. Ilara's mind raced. The hegemony's cultural exchange was nothing but a smokescreen while they systematically prepared Earth for exploitation. The negotiation delays suddenly made perfect sense. They were already taking what they wanted while pretending to respect human sovereignty. At the United Nations, the atmosphere was tense as High Admiral Vexnareth himself addressed the General Assembly. Standing nearly 8 feet tall, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the lights, he radiated cold authority. The hegemony's patience has limits, he stated, multifaceted eyes scanning the assembled diplomats. Your species' reluctance to accept our generous terms suggests a fundamental misunderstanding of galactic realities. The Secretary General, a normally unflappable diplomat, visibly paled as Vexnareth continued. You will be classified as a Class 3 protectorate. Resource allocation quotas will be established. Technology transfer will proceed according to our development matrices. This is not negotiable. Across the chamber, delegates exchanged worried glances as translators struggled to keep pace with the rapid-fire list of integration protocols that sounded increasingly like surrender terms. Ilara and Kai arrived at the UN complex as the closed emergency session was already underway. Security turned them away until a junior diplomat Ilara had befriended smuggled them through a service entrance. They burst into the secure chamber just as the Chinese representative was advocating for acceptance of hegemony terms. Better a living servant than a dead hero, he concluded. They're already making us servants. Ilara shouted, drawing shocked stares as she strode toward the central podium. Before security could intervene, she connected her tablet to the main display system. This is happening now, she said, projecting footage from a submersible drone. The murky video showed massive alien machinery extracting minerals from the ocean floor. While they negotiate in bad faith, they're already stripping our planet. Kai stepped forward, displaying the magnified images of the nanomachines. And this is how they've been ensuring we make human errors that conveniently align with their interests. The Secretary General studied the evidence in stunned silence before turning to the hegemony observers at the back of the chamber. Their impassive faces confirmed what she already knew. The footage was genuine. The next morning, Earth gave its answer. Vexnareth's rage was cold and calculating as he transmitted Earth's final message, his voice a metallic hiss through every electronic device on the planet. You have chosen the path to your own extinction. The quarantine barrier shimmered like heat over asphalt, a translucent dome extending from beyond Earth's atmosphere to the edges of the solar system. Humanity's new prison wall. 18 months into isolation, Dr. Chen stood in the converted missile silo that housed Project Prometheus, watching scientists from a dozen nations collaborate with an intensity born of desperation. The facility hummed with activity. physicists debating quantum theory beside engineers testing prototype engines, biologists developing enhanced crops alongside metallurgists forging new alloys. "Progress report," she requested, approaching the propulsion team. "We've stabilized the quantum field," replied Dr. Yoshida, barely looking up from her equations. "Efficiency's up 30% since last week." Such rapid advancement would have been impossible before isolation. Without the hegemony's subtle sabotage and the competitive secrecy between nations, human innovation had accelerated exponentially. "Director Chen, call the voice over the intercom. Priority message from Outpost Icarus." Outpost Icarus, the covered observation platform hidden in the asteroid belt. Chen hurried to the communications center, where operators huddled around a screen displaying a grainy video transmission. The man on screen was haggard, his beard unkempt and eyes wild with urgency. Captain Malcolm Rivera had been missing for 3 weeks, his mining vessel presumed lost. "Not what they told us." His voice crackled through the static. "The quarantine is a lie. They're out here, dozens of ships, stripping the outer system bare." The transmission deteriorated into noise before stabilizing. "Evidence. Coming in dark. Coordinate follows." The screen went black. 12 hours later, a battered mining vessel drifted through Prometheus airspace, running silent. Security teams surrounded it as the airlock cycled open. Rivera emerged, hollow-eyed but triumphant, clutching a secure data module. "You need to see this," were his first words to Chen. The footage was damning. Massive hegemony harvesters methodically disassembling Neptune's innermost moon, automated refineries processing the materials, transport ships ferrying resources to collection points beyond the quarantine barrier. "They're not isolating us," Rivera explained as the command staff watched in stunned silence. "They're containing us while they strip mine everything we might eventually need. Once they're done, they'll come for Earth itself." Chen studied the hegemony vessels, noting design elements they hadn't observed during the brief first contact period. "How did you get this close without detection?" Rivera smiled grimly. "Your quantum field theories. My engineer adapted them to create a sort of blind spot effect. We powered down to minimal life support and drifted through gaps in their sensor network. You shouldn't have been able to do that," Chen said, a sudden spark of realization in her eyes. "Not with the theoretical knowledge we had 6 months ago." "Necessity breeds innovation," Rivera replied. Out there, with death as the alternative, solutions became obvious that would have taken years in a lab. That night, Chen couldn't sleep. Rivera's improvised stealth technology suggested something profound. Humans adapted faster under pressure than the hegemony had anticipated. Their quarantine wasn't just failing to contain human innovation, it was accelerating it. By year 3, Earth had transformed. The initial panic and resource shortages had given way to unprecedented global cooperation. Vertical farms replaced traditional agriculture in urban centers. Fusion reactors, theorized for decades but never practical, now powered most major cities. The first quantum communication network provided instantaneous secure connections worldwide. In a secure facility beneath the Atacama Desert, Rivera supervised the final assembly of the HSS Daedalus, humanity's first true starship. Built with reverse-engineered hegemony technology and human innovations, it represented a technological leap that should have taken centuries. "Is it ready?" Chen asked, watching technicians load the vessel's quantum core. Rivera nodded. "As ready as we'll ever be." "And the crew?" "The best pilots, engineers, and scientists who volunteered, plus some creative additions." He gestured toward a young linguist who had developed an algorithm for deciphering alien communication patterns. Chen studied the ship that would carry humanity's hopes beyond their prison. "Remember the mission parameters. Observe only. We need intelligence before action." Rivera's expression hardened. "And if we find an opportunity to do more?" Chen hesitated, then answered with steel in her voice. "Use your judgment, Captain. But remember, to the hegemony, we're already extinct. Let's use that assumption to our advantage. The HSS Daedalus hung motionless at the quarantine boundary, its quantum dampening field rendering it nearly invisible to conventional sensors. Inside, the 12-person crew maintained minimal life support as Captain Rivera studied the energy patterns of the barrier through specialized instruments. There, he pointed to a rippling fluctuation. Dr. Chen was right. The field harmonics create periodic weaknesses, like a fence with predictable electrical surges. Lieutenant Sophia Rice, navigation specialist, input the calculations. Window opens in 47 seconds. Duration, 3.8 seconds. Not much margin for error, Rivera noted. All stations, prepare for breach maneuver. The moments stretched as they watched the countdown. At exactly 0, Rivera gave the command. Execute. The Daedalus surged forward, its experimental engines pushing it through the momentary weakness. For a terrifying instant, the ship's hull screamed as energy tendrils from the barrier lashed against it. Then they were through, the barrier sealing behind them, as if never disturbed. Exhilaration lasted only seconds before the proximity alarm blared. Hegemony Patrol, called out the sensor operator. Cruiser class, bearing 047, range 30,000 kilometers and closing. Shut down all non-essential systems, Rivera ordered. Passive sensors only. Drift trajectory. The lights dimmed as the Daedalus went dark, maintaining only life support and minimal internal systems. Through the viewport, they watched the massive Hegemony vessel pass. Its searchlights swept the void, passing over their position. Lieutenant Reyes sat frozen, hand clamped over her mouth to prevent even the sound of breathing as the alien ship's lights illuminated her face through the viewport. One sound, one emission spike, and their mission would end before it began. After what felt like hours, the Hegemony cruiser continued its patrol route, unaware of the human vessel hiding in plain sight. "I need a course to the nearest populated system," Rivera said once they were clear. Dr. Marcus Lee, their xenolinguist, consulted the star charts compiled from Hegemony data stolen during first contact. There's a massive trading hub at these coordinates. Multiple species, heavy traffic, good place to gather intelligence, and potentially make contact. 2 days later, the Daedalus approached the hub, a colossal ring structure with thousands of docked vessels of various designs. Rivera stared in awe at the scale of alien civilization. "Begin passive monitoring," he ordered. "Let's see what we can learn before making any moves." Dr. Lee connected specialized receivers to intercept communications. "Fascinating," he murmured as his algorithm began decoding alien transmissions. "I'm identifying at least 17 distinct language patterns." "Any mention of Earth or humans?" Rivera asked. "Not yet, but there's significant chatter about a species called the Orcs. They seem to have special status, not fully integrated into the Hegemony hierarchy, but with greater autonomy than most." Rivera studied the traffic patterns. "Can you identify Orcs vessels?" "Based on communication signatures, those." Lee pointed to sleek, reptilian-designed ships docked in a separate section of the hub. "Potential allies," Rice suggested. "Or potential informants to the Hegemony," countered Security Chief Takeda. "We can't trust anyone here." Rivera made his decision. "We need information more than we need absolute security. Find me an isolated Orcs vessel, preferably one with a small crew. We'll make contact." They identified a merchant vessel docked at a peripheral maintenance station. Using the Daedalus's stealth systems, they approached undetected and established a primitive communication link. The first face-to-face meeting occurred in an abandoned storage compartment. Ambassador Cavero entered alone, scales shifting from defensive red to curious blue-green when he saw the humans. His translator produced stilted but understandable English. "You claim to be from quarantined world." "Impossible. No species escapes isolation barrier." Rivera displayed their quantum dampening technology. "We found weaknesses in your Hegemony's methods." Cavero's scales flashed yellow in what they would later learn was astonishment. He examined the human device, multifaceted eyes widening. This technology should not exist at your development stage. He looked up sharply. Unless. An alarm blared throughout the station. Kevero's head snapped toward the exit. Security algorithms detected power anomaly. They come now. Rivera made a split-second decision that would alter the course of galactic history. Our ship can't take all of us and your team to safety. But if you help my crew escape, I'll create a diversion with the Daedalus. Captain. No. Rise protested. That's an order, Lieutenant. Rivera handed her the mission data core. Get this to Earth. Everything depends on it. As security forces converged on their location, Rise led the human crew toward Kevero's vessel, while Rivera raced for the Daedalus, preparing for his final mission. Dr. Chen stared at the reptilian being standing before Project Prometheus's leadership council. Kevero's scales shimmered with iridescent patterns as he gestured toward the holographic display showing Rivera's final transmission, the Daedalus executing a suicidal attack run that had destroyed 3 hegemony vessels before being vaporized. Captain gave his life, so we could bring this, Lieutenant Reyes said, her voice hollow as she placed a data core on the conference table. Ambassador Quivero has critical intelligence about the hegemony's structure and vulnerabilities. Quivero's vertical pupils contracted as he surveyed the underground facility. Your technological progress. Unprecedented. No species advances this rapidly without assistance. We had assistance, Chen replied bitterly. The hegemony's quarantine freed us from their sabotage. The Arxer ambassador's translator clicked as he processed this. Fascinating hypothesis. Perhaps explains why isolation is standard protocol rather than direct conquest. Over the following weeks, Quivero shared insights that transformed Project Prometheus's understanding of galactic politics. The hegemony maintained power through a system of carefully managed technological dependencies, ensuring no species could advance beyond their assigned development track. My people earned limited autonomy through specialized biological sciences, Quivero explained. Each species permitted to excel in narrow field, but never achieve self-sufficiency. In a secure laboratory, Chen and Quivero synthesized human quantum theory with Arxer biotechnology to create something unprecedented. Quantum entangled particles that could be implanted in organic matter, allowing instantaneous communication across any distance. The quantum mesh, Chen named it, watching as the first test signals traveled between labs on opposite sides of the planet with zero delay. Completely undetectable by conventional monitoring. Hegemony controls all standard communication channels, Quivero noted. This bypasses entire system. Within months, Quivero's contacts smuggled mesh transmitters to resistance groups on a dozen worlds. Earth became the nexus of a growing shadow network connecting species who had never been permitted direct communication by their hegemony overseers. On the hegemony throne world Xutharax, High Admiral Vexnarath received increasingly disturbing reports. A Navari colony had somehow acquired atmospheric processing technology decades ahead of their approved development path. A Zodiac's mining outpost was using unexplained shielding techniques to extract resources from previously inaccessible regions. Most troubling, resource shipments from multiple sectors had fallen below quotas without explanation. Explain these anomalies, Vexnarath demanded of his analysis team. Junior analyst Tivril hesitantly stepped forward. Sir, statistical patterns suggest possible connection to quarantined human world. Perhaps isolation protocols. Absurd, Vexnarath interrupted. The primitives are contained. This is clearly coordinated sabotage from known dissidents. He ordered Tivril's public execution for promoting conspiracy theories harmful to galactic stability, but privately doubled surveillance around Earth's solar system. Meanwhile, in the asteroid belt beyond Mars, the Terran Defense Force conducted its first combat exercises. Captain Rivera's sacrifice had transformed the mission from observation to preparation for eventual confrontation. Commander Helena Frost, formerly Brazil's top fighter pilot, led squadrons of experimental fighters through maneuvers that would have been considered impossible by Earth's military standards just 5 years earlier. The hegemony expects us to be easy prey when they eventually decide to harvest Earth, she briefed her pilots. Our job is to deliver the nastiest surprise of their 50,000-year history. In the manufacturing facilities carved from captured asteroids, engineers assembled the first human battle cruisers. Each incorporated technology contributed by Resistance allies. Orcs shield systems, Navari sensor arrays, Zodiac's power cores, all integrated with human innovations. The network faced its first crisis when a hegemony patrol captured a resistance cell on Proxima Centauri's colony world. The quantum mesh lit up with emergency signals as operatives faced imminent interrogation that would reveal Earth's involvement. Chen rushed to the command center as alerts flashed across displays. What assets do we have near Proxima Centauri? The Artemis is in final testing. 3 days from deployment, Commander Frost responded. Not combat ready. It's ready enough, Chen decided. Prepare for emergency extraction. Kivaro, we need everything you have on hegemony security protocols at their detention facilities. The Orcs' scales darkened to deep blue. Concern. Extremely high risk. If captured. If those resistance members talk, everything we've built is compromised, Chen countered. Sometimes the safest move is the one your enemy considers too dangerous to attempt. Hours later, the Artemis slipped through the quarantine barrier, carrying Earth's first Special Forces team into hostile territory. And with it, humanity's first direct strike against the power that had condemned them to extinction. Vexnereth's command center erupted in chaos as emergency signals cascaded across holographic displays. The hegemony admiral stood motionless, compound eyes reflecting the red alert indicators flashing from a dozen worlds simultaneously. Impossible, he whispered as reports flooded in. On Farsis Prime, industrial control systems had failed catastrophically. On Nexus 7, planetary defense grids had powered down without warning. On Meridian, the central data repository had been wiped clean. Coordinated attack, sir, his second-in-command reported. All affected systems using our standard control architecture. More alarming, the rebellions weren't random. Key strategic worlds had been targeted with surgical precision, their infrastructure disabled rather than destroyed. Infrastructure the hegemony had designed to be unhackable. The quarantine fleet, Vexnereth suddenly realized. Status report. A holographic display shifted to show Earth's solar system. For a moment, everything appeared normal. Then sensors detected massive energy fluctuations within the quarantine barrier. Operation Thunderbolt is go, Commander Frost announced as the Human-Alien Coalition fleet accelerated toward the boundary. 120 vessels moved in precise formation, their quantum drives leaving distinctive energy signatures that baffled hegemony sensors. Lieutenant Reyes, now captain of the HSS Defiant, led the vanguard. Barrier harmonics identified. Breach points locked in. All vessels prepare for simultaneous penetration. The fleet approached the barrier at key mathematically calculated weak points, the same type of fluctuation that Daedalus had exploited, but now attacked by multiple vessels simultaneously. As they breached, the quarantine's energy matrix destabilized, creating cascading failures. On the hegemony command ship, alarms shrieked as sensors reported multiple penetrations. Impossible, the tactical officer insisted. The barrier cannot be breached in multiple locations. The human fleet emerged through the collapsing barrier, weapons charge. The quarantine enforcement vessels, caught completely unprepared, managed only minimal resistance before the first quantum missiles phased through their shields. Direct hit. Rides announced as the hegemony flagship erupted in a spectacular explosion. Their shields aren't designed to stop phase-shifted ordnance. The battle lasted barely 90 minutes. The quarantine fleet, considered an honorable but unimportant posting by the hegemony military, had never faced weapons that could bypass their defensive systems. Vessel after vessel fell to the human attack, their commanders unable to adapt to the unconventional tactics. As the last hegemony cruiser surrendered, Commander Frost transmitted the coded signal that activated the quantum mesh across all resistance cells. Thunderbolt successful. Phase 2 initiated. On Earth, Dr. Chen entered the newly established broadcast center, where engineers had connected the quantum mesh to every communication system on the planet. For the first time in 8 years, humanity would address the galaxy directly. She stood before the transmission array, remembering Rivera's sacrifice, the years of isolation, the countless hours of research and preparation that had led to this moment. "Begin transmission," she ordered. Throughout the galaxy, on thousands of worlds where the quantum mesh had been secretly installed, communication systems activated simultaneously. Holographic displays, audio channels, visual arrays, all suddenly carrying the same message, bypassing hegemony sensors and controls. A human woman appeared before countless alien species, most of whom had never seen a human before. To all sentient beings suffering under hegemony control, Chen began, "I am Dr. Ilara Chen of Earth. For 8 years, the hegemony has kept our world in isolation, telling you we chose extinction rather than cooperation. What they fear, what they have always feared, is that you would learn the truth." She gestured, and behind her appeared scrolling data on hegemony suppression protocols, extraction operations, and technological sabotage, evidence compiled from dozens of worlds. The hegemony maintains power by keeping us divided and dependent. They control your development, restrict your innovations, and punish cooperation between species. Today, that ends. The transmission continued, explaining the quantum mesh network and offering instructions for resistance cells to coordinate with human forces. To those willing to stand with us, you are not alone. The age of isolation is over. Humanity extends its hand in alliance. In his private chambers aboard the Hegemony Command Dreadnought, Vex Nereth reviewed footage of the human attack with cold fury. His analysts still couldn't explain how the primitive species had developed weapons capable of bypassing hegemony defenses, or how they'd coordinated rebellions across multiple sectors. "Prepare the Grand Armada," he ordered, mandibles clicking with deadly precision. "Every available vessel. I will lead personally." His aide hesitated. "Sir, committing our main fleet strength could leave other sectors vulnerable." "They have left us no choice," Vex Nereth interrupted. "This infection must be excised completely." His compound eyes narrowed as he studied the human broadcast. "Set course for Earth. The extinction I promised them will finally be delivered." Earth's orbital defense platforms activated as the Hegemony Armada emerged from faster than light, their massive silhouettes blotting out the stars. Not dozens or hundreds of ships, thousands, stretching across visual range in perfect geometric formations that spoke of absolute confidence in their superiority. In the Alliance Command Center beneath Geneva, Dr. Chen and representatives from allied species monitored the incoming fleet. The holographic tactical display rendered the invasion force in cold, statistical terms: 5,327 vessels of various classes, from nimble destroyers to dreadnoughts the size of small cities. "They've committed everything," Kivero observed, scales pulsing anxious yellow. "Vex Nereth has stripped defenses from core worlds to assemble this force." Lieutenant Commander Takeda, now head of tactical operations, nodded grimly. As predicted, the Admiral's obsession with Earth has become a strategic blind spot. Commander Frost's voice came through the quantum comm. "Defense fleet in position. Operation Achilles is ready." "Proceed," Chen ordered, her voice steady despite the weight of billions of lives hanging on her decision. The battle unfolded in 3 dimensions. Human vessels, accompanied by ships from their allied species, executed maneuvers that hegemony tactical computers classified as suicidal. Until they succeeded, Frost's fighters deliberately presented vulnerable attack vectors, then used quantum shifting to reposition the moment hegemony targeting locked on, causing their weapons to fire into their own formations. "They're adapting." Frost reported as hegemony vessels began to adjust their tactics, switching to pattern Hydra. The Alliance fleet fragmented into smaller battle groups, seemingly retreating in disarray. The hegemony fleet, sensing victory, pressed forward, exactly as planned. On Vexenarath's command dreadnought, tactical officers reported the human retreat with satisfaction. They'd break formation, Admiral. Their defenses crumble. Commit the landing force, Vexenarath ordered. I want their leaders captured alive. They will witness the dismantling of their world before execution. Thousands of hegemony landing craft began their descent toward Earth's surface, targeting major population centers. The orbital defense platforms, seemingly overwhelmed, redirected their fire from the main fleet to protect civilian areas. Admiral, warned a sensor officer, I'm detecting anomalous readings behind Luna. Inconsequential, Vexenarath dismissed. Focus on the main assault. His mistake became apparent moments later when a secondary human fleet, accompanied by ships from 6 allied species, emerged from hiding positions behind Earth's moon. While the hegemony had committed to a frontal assault, they'd left their flanks exposed. The Alliance Reserve Fleet struck hard, targeting the hegemony formation from behind. Frost's retreating vessels suddenly reversed course, trapping the invaders in a devastating crossfire. Phase-shift torpedoes, ordered Captain Rice from the HS Defiant. Target their command vessels. The specially designed weapons passed directly through hegemony shields before detonating, crippling dozens of capital ships in the initial volley. For the first time in living memory, a hegemony fleet experienced true panic. Despite this advantage, the sheer numbers of the hegemony armada began to tell. Alliance vessels fell one by one as their revolutionary technology met the brute force of thousands of enemy ships. Orbital defense platforms faltered under concentrated bombardment, and hegemony landing craft penetrated Earth's atmosphere. In Beijing, Paris, and Cairo, civilians watched in horror as alien vessels darkened the sky. Ground-based defenses engaged the landing craft, but many still reached the surface, deploying hegemony shock troops into Earth's major cities. We're losing orbital superiority, Frost reported, her voice tight as the HSS Prometheus suffered critical damage. Ground defenses can't hold against a full planetary assault. Chen turned to the Special Operations team standing by. Activate Project Prometheus. Final authorization. Lazarus Protocol. Throughout the solar system, camouflaged installations powered up. Massive quantum field disruptors. Devices based on the principles of Chen's original research, but scaled beyond anything previously attempted, initiated their activation sequence. On the command dreadnought, Vexenarath was ordering the final push when systems began failing across his fleet. Weapons powered down. Engines stalled. Communications dissolved into static. What is happening? He demanded as his command console went dark. A cascading wave of quantum disruption swept through the hegemony fleet, exploiting a fundamental flaw in their power distribution technology the human scientists had identified years earlier. While Alliance vessels, built with different specifications, remained operational, the hegemony armada drifted helpless in space. Vexenarath, staring at the disabled controls of his mighty dreadnought, made one final decision. Emergency power to engines, he ordered. Set collision course with their primary orbital station. If we die, we take their command structure with us. The massive dreadnought lurched forward on auxiliary power, accelerating toward Earth's main orbital station, where thousands of personnel coordinated the planetary defense. Captain Rice, monitoring from her damaged vessel, recognized the threat immediately. The dreadnought is on a ramming trajectory. Orbital Station Alpha can't evacuate in time. Commander Frost's voice came through the static. Hess Prometheus moving to intercept. Helena, no, your shields are gone. Your hull can't take the impact. Someone has to stop that ship, Frost replied calmly. Tell Chen it was worth it. The Prometheus, engines flaring bright as its reactor was pushed beyond safety limits, accelerated directly toward the oncoming dreadnought. The two vessels collided in a blinding flash that momentarily outshone the sun, fragments scattering across Earth's orbit. Neither ship survived. 1 month after the Battle of Earth, representatives from 37 formerly subjugated species gathered in the Unity Dome on Earth's moon. The transparent structure, hastily constructed from materials salvaged from both human and alien vessels, offered a breathtaking view of Earth rising over the lunar landscape, blue and green and alive, despite everything the hegemony had attempted. Dr. Chen approached the central podium, feeling the weight of the moment. The assembled delegates fell silent, their diverse physiologies, from Kivero's reptilian form to the crystalline structures of the Luminar and the gaseous containment suits of the Mithran, creating a visual testament to the diversity the hegemony had sought to control and compartmentalize. Before us lies a shattered empire, she began, gesturing to the holographic display showing reports from across the galaxy. With the hegemony fleet decimated and their leadership scattered, former subject worlds were declaring independence hourly. But also an unprecedented opportunity. A Navari delegate rose, her feathered crest extending in their species' gesture of respect. Many of our worlds face immediate crisis. Without hegemony supply chains, essential resources aren't reaching dependent colonies. Precisely why we must act quickly, Chen agreed. The hegemony maintained power by creating artificial dependencies. Each species was permitted to excel in narrow fields, but never allowed to achieve self-sufficiency. Kivero stepped forward. Humans proposed different model. Knowledge exchange without restrictions. The Unity Accords, as they would later be known, established the framework for the Galactic Concordat, a new interstellar alliance based on technological cooperation rather than hierarchical control. Each species would contribute their specialized knowledge to a shared repository, allowing all members to develop balanced capabilities. No more enforced specialization, Chen explained. No more deliberate dependencies. Not all representatives embraced the concept immediately. The Zodiac's delegation, conditioned by millennia of hegemony rule, expressed concern about unregulated technological sharing. Without controls, what prevents stronger species from dominating weaker ones? Their speaker asked. An elderly human scientist named Dr. Yamamoto, the same professor who had encouraged Chen before first contact, addressed the concern. The hegemony used that same fear to justify their control. But their system wasn't designed to protect, it was designed to subjugate through artificial scarcity. He activated a display showing the accelerated progress Earth had made during isolation. When knowledge flows freely, advancement benefits all. Imagine what we might accomplish together. On Earth, reconstruction proceeded alongside celebration. The cities damaged in the hegemony ground invasion were rebuilt with integrated technology from a dozen worlds. Where Beijing's financial district had been devastated by orbital bombardment, a new urban center rose incorporating Orcs environmental systems, Navari lightweight materials, and human aesthetic design. In Geneva, a memorial garden honored those lost in the conflict. Captain Rivera and Commander Frost were commemorated with statues flanking the entrance, while alien flora from allied worlds created living symbols of the new connections forged through adversity. Admiral Cavero, now representing the Orcs in the Concordat Leadership Council, found Dr. Chen on the observation deck overlooking the Rivera Memorial. Your species continues to surprise, he said, scales shifting to reflective blue. A color she had learned indicated thoughtful respect. How so? She asked. Most species would seek vengeance after what hegemony attempted, yet your people focus on building rather than retribution. Chen studied the statue of Rivera, his expression captured in resolute determination. Our victory isn't measured in hegemony worlds conquered or resources claimed. It's in proving there's a better way forward. The memorial base bore the modified message that had become the Concordat's unofficial motto. You chose the path to your own extinction. We choose a path of shared prosperity. As the nascent alliance found its footing, the former hegemony worlds struggled to adapt to independence after centuries of control. Earth dispatched advisors and assistants, remembering their own difficult transition. Species that had been manipulated into viewing each other as competitors now worked together, discovering collaborative potential the hegemony had systematically suppressed. In the ruins of Sutherax, the former hegemony throne world, archaeologists from a dozen species carefully catalogued the fallen empire's knowledge. A young human researcher named Kai Rodriguez, once Dr. Chen's assistant and now leading his own team, discovered an ancient data crystal in a sealed vault beneath the central citadel. The contents, once decrypted, sent a chill through the Concordat leadership. The crystal contained the earliest records of hegemony expansion, including the founding protocols established 50,000 years earlier. The final entry, written by the Empire's architects, revealed a chilling truth. We have chosen this path to prevent our extinction. The hegemony had begun as a defensive alliance against a threat from beyond the galaxy, a threat they eventually defeated, but in the process became the very kind of controlling force they had originally fought against. They had preserved the galaxy, but at the cost of freedom and natural development. As the Concordat leadership debated how to address this revelation, Dr. Chen stood at the viewport of the Unity Station, watching ships from dozens of worlds moving in harmony through Earth orbit. History, it seemed, moved in cycles, but this time, humanity had helped ensure it would end differently. The path to extinction, she murmured to herself, always begins when fear overcomes hope. Behind her, representatives of 37 species continued their work, not in fear, but in the shared hope of a galaxy where diversity was strength, not a threat to be controlled.